That may seem a little overly dramatic, but this is movie magic we're talking about. Those old theaters could take you anywhere in the world you wanted to go. When we think of movie theaters in Council Bluffs, most of us probably can only think of about a handful. But actually, back in the day, the town was loaded with theaters. They all started out showing live entertainment and then gravitated to film. Our theaters were spread out all over downtown, but there were 4 in the 500 block. You've got the Elite 2 and Nicholas on the south side. You can't see them in the picture, but directly across the street on the corner, there was the New Doheny Opera House and the Majestic Theater. Now, if you've been around town for a while, you might actually have been in the Majestic Theater, but not have realized it. We knew it as the J.C. Penney store, and it was the Heights Center for a short period of time after Penney's moved out. Note that typical theater architecture with the high roof above the stage that became visible after the building next door was torn down. For baby boomers that grew up here in Council Bluffs, there were 4 choices in town: the Liberty, Broadway, the Strand, and the Drive-In. Later on, of course, we had the Midlands Four, and later still, the Mall of the Bluffs Five. The Strand, Broadway, and Liberty all started out as live theaters. By 1925, they were into cinema. Note the Liberty already staking out its niche as the affordable option. The Broadway Theater was the newest of the lot. It opened in 1923 to great fanfare. It was the city's biggest venue, so it hosted high school graduations, speakers, and various programs in addition to showing the movies. Despite being the largest and the newest, the Broadway was the first of the 3 to succumb. The theater closed in 1960. A plan was promoted by the JCs to turn the Broadway into a home for the community theater, Chanticleer. But before that could happen, the theater reopened again as a movie house, but then closed for good in 1963. King's Restaurant, known for their unique telephone-at-the-table ordering system and trademark cheese Franchi, took over the building. King's moved to North Broadway in 1970 into a new freestanding building that later became Village Inn and today is home to Lansky's. The restaurant in the old theater became the Pantry Restaurant. Though not visible to the restaurant customer, only the marquee and seats had been removed. A facade on the front and a false ceiling inside hid the fact that the old theater still existed behind the scenes. Above the false ceiling, the old theater was still very much visible. Actually, there was more up there than just old theater. I had no idea as I was eating my hamburgers down below, there was actually a fellow living above me in the ceiling. Note how our astute photographer captured this transient, comfortably making his home above the restaurant ceiling in the old theater balcony area. You can also see the projection booth toward the left, and also the equipment that the theater left behind. The building was torn down in 1976. What many of us remember as the Liberty Theater actually got its start as the Nicholas. It opened in October 1911, promising to bring the most popular vaudeville shows to town. The Liberty was the smallest of the 3 we baby boomers grew up with, and it had a much simpler facade and marquee. The Liberty may have been the smallest and the plainest, but it lasted the longest. The Broadway was gone by the mid-60s, the Strand by the mid-70s, but the Liberty kept reinventing itself. In the late 1960s, the Liberty became an ultra-mod teen and young adult club called the Psychedelic Wheel. Noting cruising Broadway was for the past generation, co-owner Bobby Everhart explained kids in 1967 want to be with what's in. So they turned the theater into a disco.
There was some seats left, but it was mainly floor space, but it sloped, as all theaters did. People really liked them slanted floors and all them lights going on.
When you walked into the theater part, on the wall to your right, there was this great big neon, like a spinning wheel thing. It was about 3 different colors of neon. It was just nothing like I'd seen before.
It was the 60s.
It may have been cool, but it didn't catch on, and the Psychedelic Wheel closed in just a few months. The building returned to being a movie house under the name the Iowa Theater. That made it a couple of years, then it became the Crest, an adult art theater. Though the focus of this video is on the theaters themselves, not so much on what they showed, we should note that an adult art theater is a bit of a different thing. The concept certainly wasn't anything new, But the Crest's programming did attract some backlash from the Council Bluffs City Council.
Well, we're government leaders. I think that we've got to try to set a standard and have a set of values that people in the community will look up to. It's perverted, it's scum, it's filth, and it's something I don't think we have to live with.
Despite the City Council's concerns, Iowa law prohibited the city from banning films on the grounds of obscenity. So the Crest continued and remained in operation for 16 years. These pictures show fighting the fire in a February snowstorm, but actually the theater had already closed by the time of the fire. It'd been purchased by the city of Council Bluffs for $110,000 as part of a downtown redevelopment project. Of the three downtown theaters, the Strand was by far the oldest. It opened as the New Doheny Opera House in 1882, a home for vaudeville and other live acts, both local and those on tour. Council Bluffs native Harry Langdon has a star on Hollywood Boulevard's Walk of Fame, and he got his start right here at the New Doheny. Same for Coney Island vaudeville star Inez Brigant. The theater became the Strand in 1916 and began showing silent movies in the 1920s. Those distinctive features, remembered by those of us today, came about from the work of architect Henry Snyder from 1927 into the early 1930s. The theater underwent a complete makeover. The inside was configured to emulate the finest motion picture palaces of all time, where there was more to seeing a movie than just a screen.
It was beautiful. Just unbelievable. It just, all the marble and everything. It was just a grand place.
I loved the Strand. It was beautiful. Saturdays, Disney movies, you bet.
As a boy, I would go with my sisters and get off the bus at the Strand Theater. And we would wait in line all the way down around the Strand Theater until they opened it up. One of the movies was Bambi.
It was just really ornate. The outside of it was ornate. The inside of it was beautiful. It was the place to go. You could watch 2 movies for 50 cents.
You'd walk up a little incline before you got to the concession stand, but you could smell that popcorn. Man, it was that good. Always got a slow poke. We wanted it to last.
When radio station KSWI went on the air in 1947, their studios were in the building. Wednesday, December 11, 1974, 10:30 p.m., a fire of electrical origin broke out. The blaze got to the building, causing collapse of the roof and extensive damage.
The owner told us probably the most valuable thing in there was the film. In those days, they were big reels. Mike Kilbane and myself and another guy actually got up into the projection room and got that film out of there. Within about 20 minutes after we got out of there, the balcony fell. After we got the fire out, the facade on the front was teetering. The jewelry stores, they were in part of that building. There was a lot of jewelry lost when the display windows blew out. And all this debris was out in the street. A lot of broken glass and stuff. And there were people on their hands and knees searching for diamonds, or there were some treasure hunters there. Finally ended up having law enforcement come up.
So why was the theater vacant that night? Although for 92 years the building had been the city's most popular entertainment venue, the Strand actually had closed early the night of the fire. It seems not a single ticket had been sold for what would have been its final show.
At the Midlands Four Theater in Council Bluffs.
The Midlands Four opened in 1977 in Midlands Mall downtown. Now, while the Strand was kind of hard to miss, dominating the downtown landscape, the Midlands Four was pretty much the opposite. It was kind of tucked away unobtrusively under the Sears store. It was nice to have a theater back in town again, but it was kind of culture shock. We went from this to this. It looked more like a hotel conference room than a movie theater, but it was nice to have a theater. The Midlands Four closed in 1992, but reopened as the Omni Four in 1995. That theater closed in September of 2013, but not due to lack of business, but rather the high cost of upgrading to digital projection equipment. The Council Bluffs Drive-In Theater opened in 1950 and lasted 56 years. Not a bad record in that industry. The first showing was The Three Stooges, followed by the main attraction, a movie called The Big Wheel, starring Mickey Rooney. And each in-car RCA speaker had its own volume control.
we'd go over the back fence, and then we'd go sit in front of the snack bar because they had speakers and benches for us. And we'd sit there. And, of course, a lot of times we went in the trunk of a car. And then we'd park clear out back, and then everybody'd pile out. Yeah.
In the Manawa area, Friday and Saturday nights, this place would be swarming with people. They'd drive around the lake or, whatever before they went to the movie.
The post-World War II interest in automobiles ushered in the era of the drive-in theater. But high prices for land, coupled with modern consumers' demand for better convenience, took a heavy toll. Over 4,000 drive-in theaters operated in the country in 1955, with just 400 remaining 50 years later. The Council Bluffs Drive-In closed in 2006. Council Bluffs Drive-In wasn't the first in the metro, nor the largest. The first opened in the area in 1948 at 76th and Dodge in Omaha and was simply called the Drive-In. The Golden Spike opened in 1952, and the Skyview opened in 1954. The Skyview had a capacity for 1,122 cars and 100 seats on top of the concession building for walk-in patrons. Mall of the Bluffs added 5 new theaters to town in 1987. The Mall of the Bluffs Five operated for about 15 years. Barnes & Noble Bookstore opened in that spot in 2002. We were completely without a theater for nearly a decade until the AMC theaters opened near Bass Pro.
History is never truly lost until it's forgotten. And preserving that history is our mission. The Historical Society of Pottawatomie County in Council Bluffs, Iowa.